to the Tuesday, January 12, 2021 meeting of the Long Meadow School Committee. For Governor Baker's order suspending certain provisions of the Open General Law, Chapter 38, Section 20, the public will not be allowed to physically access the committee meeting. The school committee is using the Zoom meeting platform to conduct this meeting. LCTV is live streaming the meeting on Channel 12, and a recording of the meeting will be posted to the LCTV YouTube channel as soon as possible after the meeting. As a reminder, all votes while participating remotely must be made by roll call vote. We will not have the Pledge of Allegiance because we are remote, so our next order of business is correspondence.
Thank you, Ryan. The following correspondence was recorded. A memo from Mr. Donald Jarvis, Director of Occupational Technology for CTEC, dated December 21st, regarding the Student of the Month for December 2020. Long Meadow students recognized were Joseph Klazak, Integrated Occupational Prep, and Ryan Dallas Twain. Letters regarding the instructional model and pandemic from Jasmine Hutchinson on December 14th, Bernadette and Mike Dunirvin on December 14th, Megan and Kevin Sheehy on December 15th, Angelique Shurins on December 18th, Carly Sankey on December 18th, and Deb Novotny on January 6th. Letters regarding girls hockey from Chris O'Connor on December 18th and Tracy Messina on January 4th. And that's it for correspondence.
Thank you. Student advisory to the school committee is going to present to us next.
All right, so we're going to start with our clubs and activities report. So the Democrats Club has been researching policy that they're going to learn about, work on. They've been having a competition within the club to make a poster for Long Meadow High School Democrats, having teams of individuals choose an event to present on and then lead a discussion with the club on it, and creating an ideal presidential candidate activity. They're also trying to get one of their representatives as a guest speaker, our representatives as a guest speaker.
So I'll be presenting about Key Club and NHS. Key Club has continued to hold meetings via Zoom every other Monday night. Recently, they've worked on a food drive with LPS where over 45 members donated food and some even helped collect food on donation days. Now they will be working on making handmade blankets for the next project. And some additional news is that the board members have created a newsletter, which they released yesterday. And these will continue to be released on a monthly basis as a way for Key Club members to stay up to date and learn about the various things they have worked on over the past month. NHS are continuing to proceed with their club activities as normal. Over 25 people have signed up for virtual tutoring this school year. Recently, the board members are working on how to hold the induction ceremony for the incoming NHS members from the class of 2022, debating whether it should be done over Zoom or whether it should be a pre-recorded video. The board wants to move forward with the ceremony being done using a Zoom webinar. And finally, similar to Key Club, there were a little over 20 members who donated to the food drive that was held on December 12th and December 19th.
I'm going to talk about the art department and the music department and their respective clubs that are running right now. In the art department, we have the Pottery Club, which has continued to work successfully over Zoom these past couple of weeks when we're fully virtual. They successfully distributed materials to all the members in the club, which I had talked about last meeting about how they distributed them, and they were going to work on lots of jewelry projects over the winter break, and they were able to do that successfully, get them to everybody, and continue to work on those and distribute those to the receivers. In general, the art department has kind of been chugging along with the fully virtual model. With talking to people throughout the art department, they're definitely very excited to come back to school later this week just for that hands-on aspect of art. And over in the music department, we just had another successful concert. Last time I was talking about the chamber concert. This time I'm talking about the winter concert. All groups, vocal and musical, successfully performed and pre-recorded many different performances, and now we're kind of working on the next upcoming big concert, which is our Pops concert. Choral groups and instrumental groups are starting to figure out what songs they will be performing and starting to kind of jump into those videos. And we're also using this time a way to focus on new software that we've been able to get with music training online and respective instrument training online, which is very exciting. Overall, there have been a lot of positive feedback from both departments and their respective clubs over the past virtual weeks, and it seems like everyone's kind of very excited to go back to the hybrid model.
All right, now we'll be doing Stand Club and GSA Club. So Stand Club is continuing with their Celebrity Project and Social Norms campaign. They'll be initiating their body positivity campaign in the coming weeks, and they're also very excited to be returning to school this Thursday. In regards to GSA Club, they're pretty steady while fully remote. They're currently working on constructing terminology posters, similar to what they've done in previous years. They're considering holding a Q&A session in which they would educate teachers on basic LGBTQ+ knowledge and answer any questions they may have regarding to the topic. But overall, they have no concerns about the guidelines or current COVID implementations, and they're very eager to return to school as well this Thursday.
So I'll be talking about As Schools Match Wits, which is our school's trivia team. They participated in an East Coast trivia tournament, and some highlights from the tournament are that one of our teams placed 7th, and junior Edgar Gephardt was the first place individual in the tournament.
I'll be presenting on the Yearbook Club and the Science Olympiad team. So for the Yearbook Club, LHS students were given the opportunity to upload a current pictures themselves for this year's yearbook photos. And for the Science Olympiad Club, they competed virtually in the Carnegie Mellon competition on January 9th. The club still has meetings every Thursday using the Zoom software to prepare for these competitions. The team that competed last weekend consisted of 15 people who worked in teams of 2 or 3 to compete in 19 categories, and the results from this competition will be released tonight at 8 p.m.
Then I'll be presenting a few more clubs: the Climate Change Club, SFAC, so Student Government, and the Jet Jotter. So the Climate Change Club released a Google form to all the students. It was sent out to all the students at LHS, and they would like as many students to fill it out. It's basically a questionnaire on how much students know about climate change. SFAC, so the Student Government and Advisors had a school-wide meeting last December, the 23rd. Every class is either in the process of or has finished an apparel sale, all of which has happened virtually, happened pretty successfully. The senior class is currently planning a trivia night. They had an issue surrounding payment before, but that's been figured out. The junior class is continuing to work on apparel. They completed semi-refunds, and they're starting to work on an anti-racism committee. Sophomores held a teleparty, which didn't go so well, but they had a really successful Kahoot trivia night. And the Student Advisory Committee, we are working with the student class officers to get our virtual suggestion box advertised, and that was put up on the school website under the student tab this week. And now the Jet Jotter, which is our student press. As you know, we've been fully virtual, and we're posting everything to our website at thejetjotter.com, where we've recently been posting about the food drive students have participated in, reporting on how our local elected officials feel about an incoming Biden administration, reporting on the decisions that you, school committee members, make here. There's also great opinions pieces on there from teachers and students, including a staff editorial posted today, which calls for concern over the power of social media after the president's Twitter ban. Speaking of Twitter, the Jet Jotter also introduced a Twitter and Instagram account so we can promote what students are writing. Ironically, our first post on Twitter was criticizing Twitter and other social media companies. I encourage everyone to check out the awesome student journalism that can all be found at the Jet Jotter for both Twitter and Instagram, and on the web at www.thejetjotter.com. And our next part is the next thing we'll be presenting is our COVID-19 guidance compliance survey, and Dr. O'Shea, Superintendent Dr. O'Shea has that slide.
And are you the host here right now? I'm unable to screen share. As soon as let me just, okay, there we go. I should be all set now.
So the student advisory committee repeated our COVID-19 adherence survey that we presented last time, and this time we changed the questions based on the input we received last time. And we received a little over 203 responses, a little bit more than we received last time.
Give me 1 second. I'll catch up with you. Sorry about. Give me 1 second. My apologies. I have a new laptop and it's not cooperating with the screen share right now. 1 second. You know what, Maxim, I think if I could, I'm going to email the slide deck to the individual committee members and we can kind of walk us through it. Okay.
Yeah, sure. We can
I'm going to
just state, I guess, the data. So, like I said, we received 203 responses, and we just changed the questions a little bit. And I think, Bridget, you can start with our first question. Just make sure you state the question, since we can't show it.
Yes. I believe I don't have the question up in front of me, but it was about wearing masks outside, and we wanted to give a variety of answers versus a flat yes or no, because we know that you could be outside alone and you could be outside where you're not around other people. And from 203 responses, we had 59.6% said they wear masks when people are around them. 35.5% always wear masks, and 4.9% said that they do not wear masks whatsoever outside.
Okay, and my question was, do you invite people from outside your household into your home and or car? So out of the 203 responses received, 47.3% of students said that they do not invite people from outside their households into their homes and or cars. 31% of the students said they did, but only to extended family. And 21.7% of students said that they allowed anyone into their homes and or cars.
So the next question we asked was, do you wear a mask when inside or in a car with people outside your household? So roughly 2/3 said that they wear a mask when inside or inside a car with people outside their house. 10% said that they wear a mask with the exception of extended family. And about a quarter said that they don't wear a mask when inside or in a car with people outside their household.
The next question we asked was, did you travel out of state for the holidays? From the 203 responses, 66% of students said they did not travel out of state for the holidays. 27.1% of students said they traveled to neighboring state Connecticut, and 6.9% of students said they traveled out of state over the holiday break.
The next question is, did anyone out of state visit your home over the holidays? And out of the 203 responses, almost everyone, around 90%, said they did not have family or friends visit them from out of state during the holiday break. And a small 10% said they had people visit from outside of Massachusetts.
And for the last question, which is, given the rise in local cases, do you feel safe coming back to school? You'll see that the majority of students, almost 58%, don't feel safe coming back to school, but 40% of those students, the red 23.4% you see on screen, will still be coming back to school regardless. A small percentage, 7.5%, aren't allowed to come back to school, so that probably means parents that don't want to come back to school for some reason. 34.8% feel safe to come back and will be coming back to school. And when we add that percentage that didn't feel safe coming back to school but will be coming back to school, that's 58.2% of our respondents. So out of the 203 people that responded that plan to come back to school. And that's all for this survey. I think all the students are very excited about the vaccine. Some students' parents have already received doses of the vaccine, which is really exciting. And we're all hoping that the vaccine distribution will reach the teachers soon too. And that's it.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any comments or questions for the students? Go ahead, Gianna. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you and great job, and that's really valuable data to, I'll speak for myself, but I'm pretty sure everybody else is seeing the value in it as well. So thank you, everybody.
Kevin?
Yeah, I definitely appreciate the club update and the survey update. I guess I'm curious, Maxim or anybody else, did any of the results surprise you? Are there any things that you think we should be doing to communicate with folks? I mean, what do you think are the take-home messages from?
I guess speak on what they mean, but I was mildly surprised, I guess, by the amount of students that don't feel safe coming back to school or don't want to. I thought it'd be a smaller percentage. I personally, a cohort B student, I enjoy coming to school. I feel pretty safe doing so. I think I feel pretty safe when I come back to school. I feel like the measures that were taken were enough.
Anybody else with a question or a comment? I'd like to point out, I appreciate you guys. Oh, Marty, I'll get you in a second. I appreciate the way how carefully you crafted your questions and were smart and intentional about what type of responses you could get and make them very clear. That always makes sure you get better data by doing that. So well done. Marty, you had a comment?
Yeah, same. I appreciate the compliance survey data. As Kevin suggests, it can help shape the messaging that we do from the central office. So thank you. And you know, it really underscores how we are all in this together, and we're only as our COVID defenses are only as strong as our partnership on this. So I appreciate the students' attentiveness to this. The mask wearing data is encouraging. Some of the car riding data might be, maybe there's some room for growth there. And then, you know, certainly it shows some of the differences of opinion too, that we see everywhere. So thank you for bringing this and pulling it together.
Fantastic. And always thank you, Mr. Dunkley, for bringing the fantastic students to us. We appreciate it.
Most welcome.
Next on our agenda are the possible approval of minutes.
I move that the school committee approve the minutes for the December 15th, 2020 school committee meeting as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the minutes? Gianna?
I'm not sure if it's just a computer thing, Ryan, but it says December 8th, 2020, and I don't know. I'm looking at you, Diane. Yeah.
Yeah, I just saw that too, so I'll change it to the 15th.
Okay, great. Thanks, Diane.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing, do we have to re-motion to have it amended? Yeah, Kevin, can you do that again?
I move that the school committee approve the minutes for the December 15th, 2020 school committee meeting as revised.
Is there a second again?
Second.
Any more discussion? Roll call vote. Gianna?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Susie?
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
Nicole?
Yes.
Bronwyn?
Yes.
Yes for me. 7-0, that is passed. Our next item is school committee announcements and recognitions. Gianna?
I just wanted to thank the college intern, Miss Kendrick. Thank and congratulate her and the students who are organizing and participating in the virtual lunches, particularly the freshman class has started, and it's just a special, exciting social emotional opportunity to gather the students in a remote way.
Thank you. Anything that can get kids feeling a little bit better about what they're doing is definitely welcome. Anyone else? Comment or recognition? Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, just a shout out to the entire community. It's been really rough trying to navigate all the stuff we've had to do, and I think that the parents, the kids, the teachers, the administrators have really done great work. And I do want to, I talked to some of my friends, and I got a really great comment the other day about somebody whose, child is newly entering some special ed accommodations, and said that things were going incredibly well, even in the remote environment. And so I really think it's great when we get positive feedback about all the great work that people are doing. So keep up the good work, everybody, and thank you for all the work that everybody's doing.
It's great. Fantastic. Anyone else? Thank you. Do we have any visitor comments? As always, in order to have a visitor comment, please just make yourself known to me so that I can call on you. Seeing none. Next up, we have our business with guests. Marty, COVID health and safety report.
So a regular attendee, honorary member of our Tuesday night club here, Chief John Dearborn, is with us. Thank you again, Chief, for coming on out. We have a few things that we would like to talk to you about tonight. Most importantly, a review of local conditions, where things stand with the metrics that we're watching. We'd also like to talk a little bit about the opportunity for pooled testing that we learned more about just today, so it's sort of hot off the presses. And then I think that the Chief has some updates on some townwide initiatives as well. So thank you again, Chief, for joining us and being part of the conversation. I know that some of our discussions will blend into the next agenda item that the committee has, which is a discussion of winter athletics. So, Chief, thanks for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Well, once again, thank you to the committee for having me. I talked a little bit about trending. We've been looking at that. We did experience a surge over the holidays, like many communities did. We peaked out at about 115 active cases during that time. As of today, that number's dropped down to 64. We are seeing a few changes in the trends within the community. We are seeing an increase in the cases in long-term care facilities. We've got are challenging to those facilities. We've seen a slight decrease, and I say slight guardedly, in community spread. However, familial spread, or groups of 3, 4, 5 people in a family all having it within the same time frame or same cycle, that does continue to be prominent. From the statewide report, we are continuing in the red. With the numbers this week, we've had some really, knock on wood, slow days with new cases, which is great for our COVID nurse, Cheryl. When she was getting 25 and high teens worth of cases a day, that can add up to well over 100 phone calls she has to make. So she's been really working hard, and I really appreciate her work. So our percent positivity as of the last report was 6.88. I do anticipate that dropping down. Again, that it's related to the amount of testing and obviously the amount of positive cases. We're doing a regional comparison. Our percent positivity is still lower than the community. That's lower than us right now is Hamden. We are seeing some drops in some of those communities that really spiked. So regionally, it looks pretty good. I think our community performance, again, I want to thank the community for everyone who's engaged. We've done fairly well through this. We've got a little ways to go. So all of the things that we've done to protect ourselves and those behaviors that hopefully become temporarily normal, we need to continue those for a little while longer. With that, I'll take questions on kind of the report first. So.
If I could, just to supplement what the chief said, I think you mentioned the peak number of active cases that we experienced. I think said it was in the 1 teens, and since that time, the number of active daily cases have slowly dropped off. The other thing that we've seen a decrease in the number of active student cases. Our nurses are kind enough to track that along with, based on the reports they get from families, but also based on the matron registry reports that come from our partners to the Board of Health. And so just before, around the 21st, 22nd, 23rd, we were seeing the number of student cases in the 20s, and it even went up to 33. And now we're down in the single digits or very low teens. So that's been an encouraging sign. The decision to resume our prior schedules on Thursday was a difficult one, but one that was made very, very thoughtfully. Obviously, we're tracking the numbers that the chief has talked about here, but we also, there's a number of other factors that we look at. One is contact tracing, and I know Chief can speak to this better than I can, but I'm really proud of the work that the town has taken on in terms of tracing situations and contacting families, and we're doing it in-house, and we're focusing on prioritizing even just the student situation. So that's really helpful. And then the other piece of this is staffing, and one of the approaches that I know this committee has encouraged and that we want to use going forward is sort of being a little more targeted in the way if we do have to go remote, we want to look at it on a school by school or a classroom by classroom basis. When there's sort of systemic community-wide transmission happening, then it requires sort of a K-12 response. As that gets more under control, we can be a little bit more targeted if we do have to close due to a staffing issue. And even as an example, I know Principal Hutton had sent out a notice to her families, letting them know, giving them the heads up that she was experiencing some staffing challenges at a particular grade level, and encouraging families to have a backup plan if that doesn't work out. So that's a really important approach that we want to focus on. So thanks again to the chief for joining us, and thanks for letting me supplement his comments there.
Marty, if I just add, one of the things I failed to mention, we do look in the trending over the last 5 days. We've only added 3 school-age children, so that's a big change for us. We're averaging 1 or 2 a day, or sometimes more. So that's encouraging for the school reopening. And if I didn't mention it, so we're at 64 cases. I'm not sure I actually said that, active cases today. So I apologize. I brief so many groups, sometimes it all runs together in my head. So if I'm missing something, just ask me.
Thanks, Chief. We appreciate it. Committee members, does anybody have any questions for Marty or Chief Dearborn? Kevin.
Yeah, Chief, you can tell me this is too much in the weeds and we can do this offline, but I'm actually curious how you get the testing results. And the reason I ask that is I've just started going back to work, and I've been tested a couple of times and I've gotten 2 negative tests. My guess is you're not getting that information because I haven't given it to you. Like, how do you get the testing results so you get the right numbers for the percent positivity?
So Kevin, that's a great question. So your negative test results, we won't see. If you have a test pending, you'll show up in the background as an event pending. We really don't look at that because we could be looking at thousands of tests. We only really see when you present positive. So that comes through a system called Maven. It's a statewide system. And our public health nurse, Cheryl, looks at that. Now, she looks at it all day long, pretty much. Positives kick into the system. Then she starts her process from there, which is the first outreach and then contact tracing and things like that. I did want to elaborate a little bit on Marty's comment about the contact tracing. So a lot of communities opted to not do their own contact tracing or case management. They opted to go with the collaborative. We felt that we needed to be have better situational awareness in the community, so we opted to stay with doing our own contact tracing, and that's Cheryl's primary role. During the surge, the collaborative was only reaching about 50% of their of the positive tests. Even today, with the numbers dropping statewide with 4,000 or 5,000 new cases, they're still only achieving about 80% with our actual contacts when a community positive is reported to us. So we're far exceeding the collaborative, and I really believe that's one of the reasons that we've been. It's a contributing factor to why we've been able to manage our numbers, along with the community's commitment to keep being safe. So, Kevin, I appreciate that question, and I hope I answered it.
Thanks, Chief. Anyone else? Susie.
I just wanted to say thank you to continue to, just recognize all the work that you're doing and, how long this has gone on compared to what we thought was going to happen back in March. So I just want to thank all of you for your coordination and the information and for sharing that with us at every meeting. I know you have a lot to do, and so we're very grateful for your efforts.
Yeah, thank you. That's appreciated. This has been truly a team effort. I'm blessed to have, from the school administration to my team here. It's we're still working really hard. We're embarking, and I'll speak at some point here about the vaccine right now. That's the next big job. And Marty, I don't know when it's appropriate to talk about that.
Yeah, go for it. I think now is a good time. There's a lot of interest in that, and I'm fielding questions, and I know you've been working hard on that. So.
Yep. So obviously everybody wants to jump in line to get the vaccine. I will tell you that about half my department's been vaccinated. We've had no issues so far. We're very thankful for it. We've struggled over the last month and a half with staffing and things like that, because we have had contact tracing and things like that. So, and I'm not a big department. I'm 26 people. So when you lose 4 or 5 people, it hurts. So we're in phase 1 now. So phase 1 is healthcare workers, forward-facing healthcare workers, long-term care facilities, and the first responders. And there's a few other subsets in there that a little bit longer. So Long Meadow, where we are, is we did not operate a phase 1 clinic because it really wasn't done for us to do. All the long-term care facilities are currently scheduled to be starting on the 21st of this month. They're in the federal program, and CVS is the vendor for them, so they'll be setting up clinics in all those facilities. So that's a big one for us, because that's been a major issue for us. First responders, we started out with just us in East Long Meadow to partner. Now we're up to the 7 towns that have decided to join our initiatives there. One of the limitations with ordering vaccine is the minimum order you can get is 200 doses. Obviously, we've done 200 first responders in Long Meadow, so we were able to join with them. So that clinic is running right now. It's Long Meadow, East Long Meadow, Chicopee, Hamden, Wilbraham, Ludlow, and I think I might be missing some. So that's rolling along really well, very well organized, and I appreciate our friends in East Long Meadow for supporting them. So where are we going in Long Meadow? So we have a vaccination plan. In fact, we've had it for about 13 years, sitting on the shelf. We took that out about 6 months ago, dusted it off, started talking about it with the hope that we would get a vaccine someday. Well, guess what? The vaccine's almost here. So in phase 2 and phase 3, we are planning right now, and we launched some information on the website about 55 minutes ago. So to hopefully give the community a little bit more information, we hope to somewhere in the around March, launch our clinics. So in phase 2, that's one that really impacts the school community. That's where the teachers and K-12 comes in. So we are fully planning service to the school community, and then moving through our vulnerable 75 and over, through more comorbidities, and then eventually in phase 3, get it out to the community. We're estimating right now that'll be 16,000 vaccinations. So this is no easy lift. Again, we're playing around the Moderna, which that is 2 shots 28 days apart. So we are moving forward that pretty well. You may see some solicitations for folks out there. Within the next few weeks, we'll be soliciting for volunteers. So those of you folks that have a medical background that might want to help us out, we'd certainly love you to volunteer. We've had some conversations with Marty to team up with us. We actually, hopefully next Monday night, we'll be announcing a significant partnership within the community to work with us. So it's moving along. I'm very excited about this. This is truly, in my mind, this is the light at the end of the tunnel that can let me take a day off here once in a while. So I'll take questions on that.
Anybody have any questions? Kevin.
Yeah, this is a very encouraging update, Chief. Thank you very much. I guess I have a couple of questions, right? So number one, if we're thinking about vaccinating our teachers, does it matter whether they live in Longmeadow and work in Longmeadow, or if they just work in Longmeadow? So I'm curious about that, number one. And then number two, is the town going to decide if the teachers are first in line in phase 2, or like how do we figure out that priority? So those are my 2 questions. Thank you.
Yep. So the answer to your first question is we don't care where they live. If that's clear enough. If they work for the town, our DPW is in that same step approach in there. So again, we don't care. They're in that essential employee category. I'm sorry, what was the second part of your question?
How do we prioritize the folks who are in that phase 2?
Yep. So each one of the phases. So phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. They're actually, you go to the state's website, and I believe we have a link on ours now. Has a priority list as you go through the phase. So you have 3 primary phases, and then there's subsets within the phases. So, and we'll stick to that unless we're directed differently.
So where are the teachers in that phase 2?
They're within 1 or 2 in there.
Okay.
I don't have it in front of me right now, Kevin.
Great, no, that's great.
Yeah, they're high in there. It's a priority. So.
Chief, you can correct me if I'm wrong here. I believe it applies to all K-12, pre-K-12 public school employees. Right? It would not just be, it would be exclusive to our teaching staff. Is that correct?
Thank you, Martin, for that clarification. You're exactly correct. Yeah.
Gianna?
Sorry, Chief, forgive me for my not knowing a lot about this. Does this include, when you say the community, does that include kids? Like, is this for kids too, or how does that work?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So right now, the 2, the Pfizer and Moderna are not, they're not allowing it for school-age children. So it's, I believe the top age on it is 18, or the bottom age at this point. There are a couple other vaccines that we're hopeful on for a couple reasons. One, I think that the age drops down to 16 on one of them. We were briefed today, and it was kind of all over the place, the information. But there's another vaccine that's close that's only 1 dose, which is which would be much easier to manage. The 2 doses on Pfizer and Moderna is a big challenge to manage for second appointments and things like that. So.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Ryan, if I could, one of the other things that's sort of hot off the presses, in addition to the Chief's announcement here relative to the municipal vaccination clinic, is the opportunity to explore pooled testing, not pool testing as I mistakenly called it once, pooled testing So several of us had an opportunity to participate in a DESE-sponsored webinar. This morning, we haven't debriefed on it. We launched it individually, so we have to put our collective heads together on this and review what we heard and make some determinations about, whether or not this makes sense for us. It is more complex, I would say, than perhaps the media reports would lead us to believe. And yet it is something I think that we should continue to explore. I can share with you just a couple of slides from the DESE presentation that we participated in today, just to give you a flavor for what is involved with this. So you'll see the general idea with pool testing is to put folks in batches. This would include, so this is testing as opposed to vaccination. This would include pools of teachers and students who voluntarily participate in this pool testing initiative. The pool sample is tested. If there is a positive within that pool, you'll see if the pool's negative, then no harm, no foul. If there's a positive within that pool, drill down deeper with this rapid reflex testing. And so there's a period of time that you have to go through to administer the test, receive the pool test results, administer that second round of reflex testing, and then identify any individual within that pool. There are a handful of districts that have participated in this pool testing. I had an opportunity to talk to the superintendent in Wellesley where this is happening. And they're on a hybrid schedule right now. It hasn't allowed them to be all in person, but it is I think the way I think about this is, if it does make sense for us, and that's still an if, it's something that we have to talk further about. If it does make sense for us, it's another mitigation strategy. It's another layer of safety that we could potentially layer on. In full candor, what I worry about is this initiative perhaps competing with the vaccine initiative. I think the vaccination initiative that the chief described seems to have more promise, and we need to think about how these two initiatives would work together. The state has said that they would essentially pay for this first 6 weeks of this pool testing protocol, and then it would be on local districts beyond that. So we have more to learn. We will continue to explore and continue to signal our interest, but we'll need to come back to the community and to the committee with some additional thoughts as we learn more and explore it further. Today was really our first opportunity to learn about this in depth. So I hope that's helpful. I'm happy to answer any questions. Like I said, I think a member of the chief staff participated in the webinar as well, and happy to answer any questions if I can.
Anyone have any questions? Kevin.
Yeah, I'd love to talk more about the pool testing, because I think this is super important. I mean, Marty, I want to push back a little bit on the issue of that versus the vaccinations. Vaccinations, as the chief said, aren't going to happen until March. That's a long way away. Vaccination for the kids, who knows when that's going to happen. I've said for a long time, more testing is better than less testing. And right now we have essentially no testing. So I think I saw somewhere, I don't know if it was on the DESE site or not, but I know we've used this a lot at Smith, is the Swiss cheese model. And I think that's a really compelling slide. And to me, the testing is one of those slices of cheese, and it's going to provide another way to help us mitigate this. I get the issue that it's going to take some time. DESE's not going to, or it's going to take resources, right? DESE's not giving us people to do this. We have to do it with our own personnel. DESE pays for 6 weeks. We're going to need this way longer than 6 weeks. So it'd be nice to, have some idea how much it's going to cost. But we do need to make a decision soon. My understanding is we have to opt in by January 15th. So to me, it seems like we need to decide on this tonight or we're going to get left out. So I really want to make sure we're giving you the guidance we need to give you, because I don't think we can delay. I would hate for us to delay and then get left behind because so many other districts opted in.
Yeah, any direction or guidance that the committee has on this would be greatly appreciated. And I agree. I think that as another mitigation strategy, as another layer of cheese there, the way you described it, it makes perfect sense. The 15th is when we need to signal our additional interest. So we did the webinar, and then by the 15th, by Friday, we have to signal our interest and provide the state with some information about us as a district. So we will do that, and then kind of bring it back. If the committee, I think if the committee feels strongly that this is something that you want us to pursue, then we'll definitely gather. We'll be even more aggressive about it. I know there's a lot of interest in it. There's about 1,000 people on the call today, so I think your interest in this makes a lot of sense, Kevin.
Jamie?
Yep. Marty, just a question on the Wellesley super that you spoke with.
Yeah.
Said that are they brand new to this, and you know, because he said that they were only hybrid, which is where we're going to be tomorrow.
Right.
I completely agree with Kevin, as long as we aren't doing this to be in hybrid. You know, if what I'm hearing is, hey, in order for us to get 4th and 5th grade back full time, maybe we use this strategy for 4th and 5th grade to get them back full time. I guess my question is what is going on in Wellesley, and why haven't they done anything more than hybrid if this has been a positive thing? I just don't want us spinning our wheels for no reward, you know, of getting the students back and making the teachers feel very comfortable with whatever scenario we're laying out here.
Yeah, I couldn't speak specifically to why it hasn't allowed them to take that next step. I think I'd have to drill a little deeper with the super on that. I think it's something that we should move forward on. I just want to be careful about overselling it, because I think some of the media reports suggested that it was sort of this golden ticket that you know, out of this challenge that we're in the middle of. So I think if we go into it understanding that it is another mitigation strategy, I'd have to talk to Mr. Mazza about, you know, are there potential federal grant funds that we could use to perhaps hire some additional folks to work on the coordination and administration of this. So there is the supers that were on the call from the small number of districts that have done this had indicated that they had found it necessary to bring on additional staff to support the coordination and administration of it. So, you know, perhaps, I know we'll have a finance sub coming up next week. That might be something that we could bring a finance sub to talk to them about, you know, the potential staffing needs to make this happen.
And just one follow-up question to it, if that's all right, Ryan. Sorry, I raised my hand. Just one follow-up question to it. Whenever you speak with the Super 2, I guess finding out, did they only pick one grade, or did they just pick the high school? You know, which strategy have they used there? Because I'm with Kevin. If we can get the 9th graders and you know, seniors back full time by using this strategy, I'm in. I think that's a great idea. Or you pick whatever grade makes the most sense. It is what it is.
I think they were doing it 7-12, if I remember correctly. I was looking at my notes as we're talking here, but I think it was a 7-12 arrangement there.
Okay.
But this is definitely gathering some momentum, and I think it's you know, I wish we had it, frankly, a couple of months ago, back in October, but doesn't mean we shouldn't move forward with it. I just want to move forward understanding that there's, you know, I don't want to oversell it to the committee or to the community. I just want to have be fully transparent about what it
you. Nicole?
I'm wondering if some of the resources for something like this could maybe be connected to resources that we might need for something else, whether that is resource collaboration with the town regarding the vaccination rollout, or resource collaboration with other towns that might also be interested in doing this that are close by. Is there any way to take this on together with other groups? Was that an option that was mentioned?
Once when the state is picking up the first 6 weeks, beyond that, you'll be able to access the state contract to get the best pricing on this possible. So in effect, it will be a collaborative cross-state effort to make this happen. So I think that's a good thing. Like, there is some high-level, state-level coordination on this, because it brings down the price and it increases the coordination and support and the resources available to us. And like I said, we have to sort of debrief on it. I know a member of the chief staff was on the call. Cheryl from the Board of Health joined it as well. I see Kathy Gsa, our LEA president, she was on the call as well. She's very intrigued and interested on behalf of her members. I hope I'm speaking accurately with Kathy on that. So, you know, we want to move forward on it, understanding that there's still some questions that we need to get answered.
Following up on Nicole's time, earlier we talked about some grants and the possibility of another grant coming sometime soon. Would this type of testing be something that we could spend any of that money on once it's official?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a clarification exactly what that grant will be able to be used for, but I would anticipate that this would fit into how we could spend the grant. Yes.
That'd be helpful. Kevin, you had another question?
Yeah, just a comment and a question. So, I mean, there's two sentences in the info that was provided in our packet that I think are really important here. This is under testing service provider. It says, following the 6 weeks, districts and schools may use their federal stimulus funding to continue the program. So, you know, hopefully that's true. And then it says, in most cases, districts and schools will use existing staff resources to administer the tests and to manage on-site logistics, right? So they're assuming we're going to be able to pick that slack up. And again, I think to Marty's point, it'd be interesting to know exactly how we would do that. My question, I'm just curious, Chief, if you could weigh in, do you see any reason for us not to do this?
To be perfectly honest with you, I spent the entire day on the phone discussing vaccines with. I got about a 3-minute briefing on this. Captain Frazier, our COVID, or actually our public health coordinator, did the call. He said the jury was still out in his mind on it. There was more research that needed to be done. He was concerned about the administrative aspects of it, on how to manage this. He thought it would be manpower intensive or person power intensive to actually do this. I'm in agreement with, I think, everybody on the call. Testing has a place and can be beneficial, but we really need to see the nuts and bolts of this thing to see how it would apply. We did kind of do some scenarios on it, trying to figure out what it would help us to avoid. I'll be honest with you, we couldn't come up with a scenario that was one thing, but I'm open to the discussion. I certainly support the committees with any information that we can provide on it. I'll try to get more of a briefing on it. Again, I didn't spend a lot of time on it. So.
Thank you. I think based on what Marty said, I'll call on you in 1 second, Gianna. If we get more information, and if you do what is required for the 15th, and then all the people who are on the call can provide us more information, and as we get more information about it, the details, and we can judge the value of it. And if it can get us more kids in sooner, I think it makes sense to all of us to do that.
That makes sense. Yep.
Gianna, you had a question?
Yeah, I just had in talking about the funding for potentially for this program. Chief, sorry if I missed it, but did you say, where is the funding coming from for the vaccine program?
So we initially, to support the ramp up, we'll be utilizing what's left of our CARES Act money, which is not as robust as we would hope. Then the vaccine program is actually supported, the actually administration and the operation at clinic. We actually are allowed to bill your insurance company for the administration of the vaccine. You as and this is a federal statute, you as the person do not have to pay anything, but we are allowed to bill your insurance company for the actual administration. So we're hoping that will offset the community cost to it. There are several other grants that we believe are coming out too. Oh, we've been told they're coming out. So I typically don't count the money till it's in the Mr. Presterzic's hands, but so that's the way we're going right now. So
thank you.
Any other questions? All right, I don't see any more.
So one final thing, and then we can move on to the next agenda item. I also want to, as we continue to try to layer on mitigation strategies, one of the things that we've been regularly attentive to is ventilation and climate. We have relied on open windows and open doors, classroom doors for the hallways as a way to increase air circulation and get some cross flow. Obviously, with the cold weather upon us, that becomes more challenging. So I have advised families that children ought to come in being prepared for maybe less than typical temperatures in classrooms. I know that this has been a concern of our staff. Captain Gsa, as our LEA president, has brought this forward, and it's something that we want to continue to address. During the remote period, our DPW partners, they have overnight that they're basically maxing out our building temperatures. So when children arrive and staff arrive in the morning, the classrooms, the offices will be warmer than normal. And then as we open windows an inch or two to allow that ventilation, the temperature will drop sort of slowly throughout the day. So we're still in the middle of trying to make those adjustments. We really want to be attentive to ventilation for any weather. And there are buildings that are challenged with HVAC, trying to regulate it and make it comfortable for teaching and learning. It might be that that's another reason that we would have to go remote. And so I just want to sort of put everybody on advance notice on that we'll be very attentive to ventilation and really mindful of those outside temperatures. So thanks to the DPW for their work on this. It's been a round-the-clock daily effort on their part. They work quietly and behind the scenes, but it's been a big push of theirs. So thanks for them on that. And if the committee has any questions on that, I'm happy to take them.
Anyone? All right, I don't see any.
So your next agenda item, if we could beg the chief's time on this in case something comes up. The winter athletics, athletic director Captain Oscar is with us. Assistant Principal Dockerly is with us. The committee had made it proceed thoughtfully, carefully, safely with athletics, and so that continues to be our path. The question upon us in every other district is the question of competing against communities that might be designated red on the state metrics. I think our thought is that we recognize that we want to put our athletes in safe situations. We would want to proceed thoughtfully and carefully against as we schedule teams that might be designated in the red, and with the understanding that we might need to pull back based on what we hear from our Board of Health, from Chief Dearborn, or from another Board of Health. We might need to pull back and not compete against communities that are designated red. So that's our thought at this point, and wanted to get some feedback or perhaps direction from the committee if that is not a sort of comfortable strategy. Or if you have any questions about winter athletics for Mr. Capitasso or Mr. Dunkel.
Anyone have any questions? Jamie?
No question. I'm good with that strategy. I think, if we're going to play sports, let's play sports. And then obviously, if we have a situation, you guys, obviously are going to have the information from Chief Thorborn or whomever and make a good decision. So I think that strategy is good.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I mean, based on where everybody is right now, if we said you can't play against towns in the red, we would have no sports, right?
I believe that's correct, Mr. Capitasso.
Yeah, at this time, I believe there's about 35 plus schools that are in the red in this area.
So I think our thought would be then that, we would just need to, ADs talk to ADs and boards of health talk to boards of health and administrators talk to administrators. So we'll have an understanding of what the conditions are in other communities and hopefully I think our parents have come to understand that we have to make, those decisions based on the information that we have. So if that's a direction that makes sense.
Kevin?
Just a follow-up question for Mike. I guess I'm curious, if let's say that my daughter was on a team and I was comfortable with her playing against towns in the yellow but not in the red, and would there be repercussions if I went to the coach of the team and said, I'm not comfortable with my daughter playing against this town in the red, but I want her to be able to play in future games? Would that be held against her, or is that something that parents are able to do depending on their comfort level with, where their family's at?
Yeah, I mean, that's everything we've done this year is based off of what each family feels best for them and their situation. So we're going to work with every family as situations come up, as long as they give us a heads up and we talk about it. But yeah, it's whatever's best for your family situation.
Any other questions or comments? So Marty, the gist of what you're asking is that we're not looking to micromanage the idea of sports during this, and that you all will be able to make decisions as necessary when you get the information that is relevant to the situation.
Yeah, I think that's the approach that I'd like to move forward with, and assuming the committee is comfortable with that.
Yeah, Gianna? Yeah.
Sorry, Ryan, my brain was trying to, you said that way better than I was thinking it. But just to be clear, so towns could be red for reasons having nothing to do with school. And if something came up where, say, somebody on, I don't know, indoor track team from another town, that was, something happened, there was a positive or contact or whatever, then you all would just be like, okay, hey, so indoor track against that town doesn't happen this week.
It's a good way of saying it. I think, as I've said, we could be playing against the community that's in the green. That's unlikely, but hypothetically, there could be a community that's in the green. But we're aware that there's some student cases that are troubling and concerning, and so we wouldn't send our student athletes into competitions in those situations. And conversely, the example you give, Gianna, there could be a community that's designated red, but there are explanations for that. They're red based on congregate housing numbers. Again, it's really, I think just all of us at every level talking to our counterparts, whether it's admin, boards of health, ADs, coaches, that kind of thing, and making the decisions that keep our kids safe. it's a challenge, though. I mean, it's comparable to keeping our schools open. I mean, we're going to run into situations as we did today, where student athletes become close contacts, and we have to put in place, we have to put in motion the protocols that we have been using since the beginning of school. So that's a reality, and it makes it a challenge, but that's the challenge that every organization, school and non-school, is facing these days.
Great. I do have a question. Mike, are there daily regular meetings between the PBIAC and all the ADs to get you all together sharing information?
There's not daily meetings, but our bubbles talk almost daily. We're through a daily text and chain of what's going on and how's everything going. So yeah, within our bubbles, yes, our PBIC will meet. We've been meeting almost twice a month right now. So yeah, we're within our bubbles of who we'd be playing. Yes, we'd be in constant contact with those groups of ADs.
That makes, Marty, that makes most sense, I think, to me, is ADs talking to each other, principals talking to each other, and supers talking to each other. And it's certainly much faster to react than hoping we have a meeting that comes up at the right time. So
yeah.
I think, do we have consensus that you all, committee members, that we agree if that's how we want to do it? Right on. Hopefully we can play a full season. That'd be fun.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike and Paul, for your work on this. Then the last chunk of this agenda relates to our instructional models. I wanted to let you know where things stood with grade 3. You've probably seen some of the communication that our principals have issued. We are able to move forward with getting our grade 3 students in 4 days a week. The timeline for that is today, the principal sent a letter home to families announcing the new teachers at each school in cohort C. The letters for new class assignments will go home on the 14th, on Thursday. And then at Blueberry and Wolf Swamp, we will begin the new arrangement with the new teachers and the new class list. Center School, because of a staffing challenge, needed to delay that by a couple of days. So they'll start with the 3rd graders being in 4 days per week on Thursday, January 21st. So I want to thank the committee for supporting this, encouraging it, expecting it, and making sure that we had the allocations in place to make it happen. It was a big lift by our administrators. We had some hopes that we were still looking at 4th and 5th grade. We haven't given up on that. We still want to see if we can identify some teachers to make it happen at those grades levels as well. But as we said, our priorities have been first pre-K to 2, and then 3rd grade, and we'll have to get back to you with some additional updates on grades 4 and 5. But certainly we continue to look at the instructional model to make sure that it's something that's serving teaching and learning. So that's where we are, 3rd through 5th grade. I want to mention at the high school, my apologies for being so long-winded here. Principal Landers had sent home some communication to his families. The high school is also hoping to bring additional students back in for 4 days per week. Part of the challenge is wanting to identify families' intentions with regards to cohort C. Mr. Dunkley is here and he can explain it with more precision than I, but the hope is that we can give families an opportunity to signal to us what their intentions are for their children, whether or not they'd like to stay in cohort C for an extended period of time or exercise the option to come back in. Once we have kind of a fixed understanding of what that looks like, then we can sort of systemically across the board, across all grades, so to take a look at opportunities to bring students in 4 days per week. The reason there's room at the high school is that there is a greater number of cohort C students than we probably anticipated back in the earlier part of this year. So Mr. Dunkley is here. If the committee wants any additional explanation of that or needs some more precise information about the timeline, Paul can help us out with that. So I wanted to provide that update. I know the committee, as a committee, you have asked us, challenged us, directed us to take a look at all grade levels. So this is sort of a next important step for us at the high school level.
Thank you. Anybody have a problem?
Thanks. I just have a question for Mr. Dunkerley. I know all the logistics aren't figured out yet. How would it look for a student that, with 4 classes per day, maybe there was enough room for them to get into 2, but not the other 2, and keeping the 6-foot distance? Would they remain in the cohort where they stay at home those 2 days?
All right, so that's a great question, and I think that's going to be one of the secondary things that we look at. Right now, our focus is to, as Superintendent O'Shea said, to identify those students in cohort C who intend to remain in cohort C for a period of time. Our hope is that we're going to be able to entice some of them to come back. It's no secret that cohort C at the high school is 36.8% of our total student body as of about an hour and a half ago. And we've had a few kids come back from cohort C. They can come back anytime. We've encouraged that. But we've also had a few kids leave cohorts A and B and go to C in the last couple of days as well. So the number's been pretty static. Principal Landers has communicated since before December break that we were going to go down this road. So the first thing we want to do is see how many kids from cohort C we can get back. A lot of the kids that are struggling are in cohort C. Not all of them, but a lot of them, and we've been inviting them as individuals to come back to A or B, and in some cases, actually inviting them to come back for 4 days a week with mixed results at best. So once we identify and kind of solidify what cohort C looks like, then we'll take those next steps in trying to get more kids back in the building, more kids for 4 days out of cohorts A and B. And we have talked about, but come to no conclusion yet because we don't know what the numbers look like in terms of whether we could have somebody do a mixture of come in the morning for a physical class, but be remote in the afternoon because of space constraints. That one remains to be seen. So I'm sorry I don't have a definitive answer for you. I just don't have the numbers to back up a good and appropriate response.
No, that's helpful. Thanks.
You're welcome. You're hearing it. This is sort of more of a systemic look. It's looking at it across the whole school. As Paul said, we targeted individual students for 4 days a week, and now it's trying to take a look at the entire schedule. I know one of the committee members at one point, the question was, well, could we work something out for our seniors? Again, it often comes down to those classes that are pure senior classes and maybe not mixed classes. So we have to look at those factors.
Kevin?
Yeah, Paul, just following up on that, a senior that I happen to know reasonably well really likes going 2 days a week, and the idea of going 4 days a week is not as appealing. Is it going to be an option, or is it going to be like you're either coming 4 days a week or you're going into cohort C?
Oh, no. We're hoping again to entice people from cohort C to come back to either A or B. We're also looking at individuals to come 4 days a week, but cohorts A and B as it exists now, particularly for that student you might be referring to, Kevin, I think I might know who that is. That option is going to be on the table as long as the hybrid option is available to all students at LHS. I don't see that changing for certainly the foreseeable future. Does that answer your question, sir?
That's great. Thank you, Paul.
You're most welcome.
Gianna?
Thanks for all the information, Paul. Is there any kind of stipulation for, some students I know, they're just going to stay cohort C until the end of the school year. But let's say there's some who, is it January 29th, I think is the deadline to kind of report if you're going to stay. Does that mean like, you know, if the vaccine comes out in March, like are those cohort C students going to be stuck isn't the right word, but how's that going to work?
Yeah, so you're exactly right. The drop dead date to sign up to stay in cohort C is the 29th. We're actually going to be sending a communication out to all families this Friday. And what we're looking at is, you know, once we get a look at those numbers and figure out, you know, how many kids want to, you know, come back, we'll do the work to get them back. And but then we're going to need to probably freeze it for the third quarter, so that we can then work at getting as many other kids back into the building, perhaps for 4 days a week. Certainly, we've already been concentrating on those students who are, you know, not performing academically where they should, those kids who are having social and emotional challenges. You know, that is ongoing, and we're bringing those kids back. But if we have an opportunity to bring more kids back 4 days a week, once the cohort C group is solidified, at least for the third quarter, we intend to do that. And then we'll revisit it for the fourth quarter as we enter spring. And fourth quarter starts right at the end of the first week of April.
Okay, so if people sign up for cohort C by January 29th, they'll be frozen in cohort C until the first week of April. Is that?
That's a fair assessment.
And they'll still be able to participate in sports and extracurriculars as they've been doing all along.
Correct.
Perfect.
That is correct. Yep.
Part of what has challenged us to bring back more students to the high school is they've had to sort of save a seat, if you will, for the possibility that cohort C students might return. And so if we have a clear idea of what that looks like and it's stabilized for a period of time, we can use that period of time to bring back students for 4 days a week. I think we heard it from our student council advisory crew that, you know, the kids want to be in school, and I think we can kind of reverse the flow of the cohort C. I think it'll be a good thing, and we have opportunity to do it, but we want to look at it systemically. We want to look at it across the school. Up to now, we've been looking at it sort of on a student-by-student basis and identifying individual students for 4 days based on their level of academic performance, their engagement, their attendance. So this is sort of a preliminary report on that, and you perhaps have seen some communication come from the high school, and perhaps you'll see some more, as Paul suggested, at the end of this week.
Anyone have Susie?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Dunkerley. I have a question that's I don't know if it's totally related, but I guess I'm just wondering, you know, from that data that we saw that the students shared, there were, you know, quite a few students who felt they didn't feel like it was safe to come back to the high school. And I don't want to, my question is not about why. It's more about, you know, if we have that many students who are not attending in person, I guess my next, you know, kind of where I go to next logically is we haven't talked about the middle school at all. And I'm wondering if, you know, if we get to a point where the high school, there's really not a huge uptick in the amount of students taking any advantage. And this might seem crazy, and you know, I'm just trying to think outside the box, but is there a way that we can use the high school space for, you know, because we have received some communication from the community about concerns over our middle school students not having enough time on learning. And so I'm interested to just hear if that's even been discussed or a possibility. If we find out on January 29th that, you know, that 36% of students aren't coming back to the high school because they're going to choose to stay in cohort C, how can we maybe think outside the box on getting more time for our middle school students?
Meaning perhaps
in person.
You said meaning even locate middle school students, yeah. We did talk about that at the elementary level as a possibility for Blueberry to see if they, and I'd be open to looking at that as a solution for the middle school. The middle school has taken a fairly aggressive approach in terms of identifying individual students. I checked in with Principal Allen and Nelson this week that each school had identified, I think it was 30-something students beyond the program students for in-person learning. So they've they're right now their classrooms are smaller and they have fewer larger space opportunities. But we could look at that certainly, Susie, after we get the information back in the high school to see if there's any opportunities to include our middle schoolers. There's transportation and we're willing to roll up our sleeves and take a look at that.
Thank you. One thing that pops into my head though, aren't our teachers physically teaching in their buildings right now?
They have the option of coming in right now when we're remote, and then beginning Thursday.
I mean during the hybrid.
Yeah, yes, they'll be here in person with us.
So that would require relocation of high school teachers if you're using their classrooms for middle schools.
Correct.
Well, just a snag. I appreciate the idea that the administration is going to look in how to get more middle schoolers, and we would love that. Just one thing that popped into my head that might be a little snag. Any other questions?
All right. Well, we'll keep you posted. I appreciate everybody's time, and again, a shout out to the admin team for all their continued work on this, and looking forward to resuming our schools on Thursday, and understanding that we're tracking the data every single day.
Bronwyn?
Sorry about that. Marty, can you just review, because I feel like we've spent a lot of time initially with the K-2 and then talking about the 3-5, and now we're talking about the 9-12, which is great. I know Susie brought up a thought for 6-12. I know it's wasn't on the agenda, but can you just talk about the space restrictions, basically why we have to stay hybrid there at this time?
Specifically at the middle school or in general?
Specifically at the middle school. Seems to be the only spot right now, isn't it?
It's probably our biggest, it's a pinch point for us right now, and I'd invite Tom and Sue to help me out with this. But our middle school classrooms generally are small. They have the overall footprint of the building is smaller. Their class sizes are pretty maxed out, and it's hard to bring. They're picking their spots where they can potentially bring back individual students, but there isn't simply much opportunity to do it in any systemic across the board way. And Sue and Tom, feel free to, if you have any additional thoughts on that.
It's especially maxed out in like the science rooms, the science labs at both schools. And I know that there are several classrooms where they couldn't fit one more kid in there, one more student in there without reaching the 6 foot. So I think it's pretty much strictly a space issue at middle school.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to make sure that the public understood that. It wasn't that the administration or the school committee isn't focusing on trying to get 6 to 8 back, as many as possible. It's just that with the space restrictions, we have to focus on the individualized students right now, and the fact that they got 30 plus back or so recently is great, I think. But just so the public understand, it's not for lack of the admin or the teachers or the school committee not wanting it to happen. It's just strictly a space issue. Thanks.
I can get the committee some additional information on that.
One would think that this information is relevant to the idea that maybe the state needs to give us some money regarding middle school buildings. It's possible.
Yeah.
That's something I can second. No.
Marty, next up is Superintendent's report.
All right, I will be very quick. So I talked to Wolf Swamp Road faculty on Monday about the need to initiate a screening and search process to identify Mrs. Pratt's successor. We would love Mrs. Pratt to stay with us, but we want to honor her attention to enjoy her retirement once again. And so that process will begin before the end of this month. I would like to invite one committee member to be part of that screening process. I think it can wait until your next meeting, and I'll have a sort of a calendar timeline for you and an explanation of the process. But that has begun, and I want to get out ahead of that to be sure that we identify a highly qualified principal to succeed Ms. Pratt. So, and just a public thank you to her for stepping in and guiding us through a really challenging time. I don't know where we would have been without her. Her expertise has been and commitment has been truly amazing. So the other thing is we had another meeting of the CLE Equity Audit Committee, the Center for Leadership and Educational Equity. The audit committee met again this afternoon, taking a deep dive into some qualitative data. Our admin team did what we call empathy interviews with students from underrepresented populations in Long Meadow to really understand the experience, their experience with how welcome they feel, how included they feel, how safe they feel as students in Long Meadow Public Schools. So the equity team was taking a look at that data, and we are on track for having a recommendation completed. I think it's going to be soon, in the middle of March, end of March, is it?
Yeah, in March.
So that work is progressing, and I'm really pleased with our partnership with P, and thank you to Nicole and Gianna for being members of that Equity Audit Steering Committee. It's been great. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is my report, and I'll repeat my plea to the public to continue doing, as the chief pointed out, as a community, we're doing a good job in fighting the pandemic together. So please continue to do a good job so we can get all the kids back in as soon as possible. Get your vaccines when it becomes available, and please be smart about what you're doing. Next up, we have the student rep report. Maxim.
Nothing new, just what we said at the beginning. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Max. LPVC report.
The last meeting was focused a lot on the budget timeline. We'll be meeting again January 20th.
Thank you. Energy and sustainability.
Yeah, we have a couple of things for the committee. First, if folks are interested in the climate bill that's before the governor, the committee would encourage folks to send a note to the governor to express your opinion. It's on his desk. It's passed the House and the Senate. It's waiting action by the governor. So the committee is encouraging folks to weigh in on that in hopes that the governor will sign it. The second thing is related to electric vehicle charging stations. And so right now the town manager is putting together a grant for the Green Communities Fund. And in that grant, we're proposing to put electric charging stations somewhere in the high school. And so that's something I hope we can put on our agenda for next meeting so we can decide, if we support that. And I think the big question is where it would go. And this, I'm happy to defer to Tom or someone else because on the committee, we just didn't know if it made sense for it to be near the administrative wing, because maybe it'd be easier to get the power to the really close parking spots, or if we could run the power off the maybe light poles in the student or staff parking lot. I have no idea. But we need the committee to weigh in on that before we put it in the grant proposal. So that's just a heads up. And again, I'm hoping that we can support that and figure out the details either before the grant goes in or hopefully after we get the money. So that's the update. Happy to take any question.
Amy?
I just have a question just because I don't know it, and I figure you'll find out, Kev. Who pays for that electricity?
So there's two models of how it works. I don't know which model we're going to go with, but we've definitely discussed some where you would actually be charged for it, right? Like you would swipe your credit card and you would be charged for the electricity that you would use to fuel up your car. And I don't know exactly how it would go, but I think that's something where we would be able to weigh in on whether the town is paying for the electricity or we're just providing the station, and then you would again swipe your credit card and pay for it.
So similar like a Big Y, the Big Y Expresses have that scenario. I believe they have a swipe versus the town paying for it. Because I would assume that if it's on our property, we'd be paying the bill for it if there wasn't a swipe. That would be my only thing is to whoever's using it. I wouldn't want somebody up there with a Tesla parking it and using it for free. So as long as we're not paying the bill, I'm good with that.
Yeah, and I appreciate that comment, Jamie, because I think that's some of our concern, especially if you have an electric car and you live near the high school. It'd be awesome to just park your car there overnight and you walk to your house and then you get free charge on your car. We're clearly not interested in doing that, right?
Yeah.
Is that something we want on the agenda, Kevin? Would you need it on the next agenda, the 26th?
That's what we're hoping for. We would love to get the feedback. Again, I know it wasn't on the agenda, so it's not appropriate for us to vote on it now, but I'm hoping we can do that at our next meeting.
Thank you, Gianna.
Ryan, is it okay to go back to Superintendent's report and ask him a question?
Sure.
Yes.
Can I ask Kevin one question first about this? Can making the electric charging stations be high school parking lot? And can we get someone else to pay for that?
So that hasn't come up on our committee. That seems like a way bigger scope project than the Green Communities grant that we've been talking about.
Too bad.
Yeah, but that definitely hasn't. I think that's just bigger than what we're.
Make a lot more people in favor of your electric charging stations, that's for sure. Gianna, go ahead.
Guys, I have one more thing to add some sprinklers for all the grass around the area too. I think everybody would be very much in favor of it. Sorry.
Now it's your turn, Gianna.
Thanks, Ryan. Superintendent, I just wanted to ask you, and thanks for giving the update on the Wolf Swamp principal search. I just wanted to ask, are there any, I know we've talked about, seeking out a diverse, group of teachers and parents. Is there going to be conscious efforts to get a diverse pool, even though it's a principalship?
We have begun discussions on that and how we can advertise and recruit to ensure that we have a diverse applicant pool. So we have some ideas on that, and I think I'd like to include that in my update at your next meeting. But I definitely hear you on the importance of attracting, not applicants who might not otherwise apply. And so we're really interested in having a diverse applicant pool, and really across the board with all of our hiring, that seems to be an emerging theme from our work with crew, is the lack of diversity in our teaching staff and our administrative staff. So it's something we want to address.
Thank you.
Thank you. Open space, Jamie? Nothing. Okay. Next up, Tom, Subcommittee Finance Sub. Tom and Jamie.
Thanks, Ryan. Finance Sub met earlier this evening. We continued our dialogue on the FY22 budget development, receiving input from Finance Sub in terms of guiding us with how we'll develop it in preparation for presenting the budget on the 26th to the full school committee. We've scheduled this follow-up meeting for Finance Sub for next Tuesday, again to probably finish with our work in preparation for the FY22 budget. We also discussed the FY21 budget. They received a couple reports that will be on your next agenda at school committee on the 26th. But for consideration tonight in your packet is a request to approve budget transfers in the FY21 budget related to 2 grants. Finance Sub did vote to recommend it. Neither of the revisions are changing the amount of the grant, they're just reallocating the funds. The first is the drug-free community grant. Again, redistributing funds to reflect how we're going to spend the money in this virtual environment in terms of the outreach that they're doing. Differs compared to if we were in person. So the grant is just revising a couple of the lines to reflect that. And the second grant is the COVID Relief Fund, which again is a federal grant we received earlier this fall. We expected to have to spend it out by December of 2020. The new federal stimulus that was approved at the end of December delayed it for another year, so they gave us until December of 21. But we had pretty much spent out the full allocation, thinking we only had until the end of last month. The revision that is in front of you tonight reflects where we spent that grant. So it's amending the budget to reappropriate the funds into the lines where the actual expenditures were incurred. Again, not changing the total allocation of the grant amount that we received. So I'm happy to answer any questions anybody might have in regards to that budget revision request.
Jamie?
Yeah, just one thing. These are the standard ones we do on a periodic basis, and generally it's exactly what Tom just said. Completely routine, not many big adjustments, so it's pretty straightforward.
Anybody have any questions for Tom? If not, there is a motion in the packet.
I move on the recommendation of the Finance Subcommittee that the school committee approve the budget revision as outlined in the document FY21 Grants and Special Revenues Budget Revision number 2 dated January 12th, 2021.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. Kevin?
Yes.
Bronwyn?
Yes.
Susie?
Yes.
Gianna?
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
Nicole?
Yes.
And yes for me. The motion passes 7-0.
The second item on your agenda would be consideration to add a special meeting sometime the week of February 1st. The purpose would be to hold a public hearing. We're required to hold a public hearing on the proposed budget. So with the timeline of presenting the budget to the school committee at your next meeting on the 26th of January, and a deadline to submit to the town by February 12th, the hope would be that if we could hold a public hearing the week of February 1st, then deliberate on any input they received at that public hearing, and then make any amendments or vote the final budget for submission. So I think we proposed Tuesday, February 2nd, but there's no requirement in terms of when it has to be held. Just provided we can give notice to the community that this public hearing will be being held for input on the budget.
Can folks do a quick calendar check and see if that works? Kevin said yes. Jamie? G? Nicole? Bronwyn? All right, looks like you got your date, Tom.
Great, thank you very much. That's it.
Kevin?
Just a question, looking at what's on the annotated agenda. Tom, it says something about vote on budget date, February 9th regular, and then another special. Like what is up with those two dates?
I think in case there's, Diane can help me, but in case we have an issue on the 9th and we can't vote if we don't have our meeting, potential to post a snow date, I'm assuming, Diane, is that what we were thinking?
When you and I had spoken, Tom, we said they could hold the public hearing on February 9th and then just come back on Thursday. So it gave you two options.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're leaning towards the second, and that's fine.
You may also see a posting for a meeting on later that week in case there's any weather event on the 9th and we can't have a regular scheduled meeting. It did happen to us, I believe, a few years ago. But the option, I guess, we could hold a regular meeting on the 9th, which would include the public hearing, and then have to schedule another meeting for later that week if we weren't holding it on the 2nd.
And can I just clarify that we would hold that meeting on Thursday, February 11th, not Friday, February 12th? Because right now it's Thursday, February 12th, which is not Thursday.
Yes. Yes. It would be Thursday the 11th.
Got it. Thank you.
But right now we're agreeing on the 2nd and the 9th, and the emergency date would be the 11th, correct? Okay. Any other questions on those dates? Cool. Policy sub.
The meeting plan for January 19th. Received some information from our attorneys around our harassment policies and Title IX related policies. So that's January 19th.
Curriculum sub.
We're scheduling a meeting for January 28th. Is that the right date?
28th, is that right, Dan? Yep.
And the EFL sub, Bronwyn?
We have a meeting on this Thursday.
Fantastic. So more to share later. Ongoing business is next up. 2020-2021 school calendar revision.
So this is a procedural thing. There's a revised calendar in the packet. It reflects moving parent-teacher conference dates for the middle and elementary schools, and the conferences are now scheduled to Wednesdays when students are working remotely. So it does require the vote of the school committee. We don't have a recommended motion in there, Diane, right? We've got to.
No, I didn't.
And it would be a simple motion. The committee is agreeable to move to accept the revised 2021 school calendar.
Anybody want to make that motion, and then we can discuss if necessary? Nicole?
I move that the school committee approve the 2020-2021 school calendar revision as presented.
Is there a second?
Superintendent O'Shea?
Is there a second? Any discussion or questions about the revision? Gianna?
Thanks, Ryan. I'm just wondering, Superintendent, so it says calendar removes the half days of school for parent-teacher conferences. So do those revert back to full days, and does that mean the end of the year date is now?
It won't change the end of year date. That's a good question. Because those half days had counted as part of the 180. The calendar was the calendar and the conference dates were set pre-pandemic, and they would have called for traditional half days of school. In this case, they're moved to Wednesdays where students are learning remotely anyway. So, and in effect, it eliminates the half days of school, and students still will be learning asynchronously. The evening conference opportunities are still in place, however. So I hope that answers your question, John.
So it still counts as a school day because the kids are working remotely,
Correct.
asynchronously. That's why it still counts, Gianna. You're wondering why it's still a school day?
I'm trying to do the like. Are we talking about? Maybe it's just because is it 2 half days and that equals 1 full day, and that's why it doesn't affect the end of the year. I'm not trying to be dense about this. I'm just trying to figure out is it the wording here or?
Can I?
Yeah, sure.
It's because in a typical year where we didn't have remote learning, they would have had to take a half day for but our half day counts. Our half day would have counted as a full day anyway. We're just canceling the need for an early dismissal, right? Isn't that what you're essentially doing?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so because
so there's no early dismissal happening on the Wednesdays. They do the conferences on the Wednesdays.
Right.
Got it. Thank you, everybody.
Amy.
Yep, just a general question in with regards to the calendar. Has there been any discussion around the February break as to whether we want to keep it?
Nothing serious, some passing conversation. Maybe 1 or 2 people have asked me about that. I think my recommendation would be at this point, I think families have schedules in place and that we all, students and teachers benefit from the break that is provided. It would mean, if we canceled it, I suppose it would mean, perhaps getting out a week early, which I guess we'd all like to kind of move on at the end of this school year. But
what date would that end us at? I mean, we backed off all of the snow days. So earlier this year when we voted to do that, what date would this end the school year at?
And the last day of school is the 15th of June currently, is that correct?
It's actually the 16th because we did have one snow day back in December on December 17th.
Yeah.
So right now, 16th.
So February break, hypothetically, we did
only do 4 days.
4 days because of President's Day.
Correct.
So what day would that end school at? I'm not looking at calendar.
Thursday the 10th.
So June 10th.
As it is, the 16th is, Diane, correct me if I'm wrong here, maybe I am. I think it's on the early end. In recent years, we've gotten out in the June 20s. So this would get us out on the 16th, and the likelihood that we'll have snow days is less this year than in previous years. It would be subject to negotiation if we elected to eliminate that February vacation. It feels like it's right around the corner, and I feel that family schedules are either in place or in development. I think the earliest I could bring that to the committee would be your January 26th meeting. If that's something that you would like us to do, by all means, we would sit down with the LEA and to try to achieve that. But it is subject to negotiation, and it does feel like it's, I think we all benefit from the breather that we get during the vacation periods. And although I think I also may be thinking, maybe part of your thinking is that it's lessens the opportunities for travel and gathering, which helps us.
It's the only reason why I'm asking the question. I'd rather not go through another spike, 2 weeks into February, because half the town went to Florida or Vermont to ski or wherever we're going. I'd like to be out on June 10th versus, having a week randomly in the middle of February where, no one can travel and do all the things that everybody hasn't been doing for the most part. So, I mean, I would prefer it, but that's obviously, I'm just one member of it. I kind of look at it as, if we get into a rhythm here, we're starting tomorrow, especially the elementary schools, to get into a rhythm, trying to make all these changes to the high school that on the 29th of January, we're going to get going and then we're going to take a week off. I don't personally, I don't think it makes any sense. For those two reasons, a rhythm, and I'd rather everybody stay in town.
Well, we're certainly would follow the committee's direction on this if this is something you'd like us to initiate.
Anybody, I mean, I have thoughts, but I don't know if anybody else wants to share a thought. Here's Jamie's point. My thought is nope, but if you look at the student data they shared with us, according to at least their survey, people did a pretty good job of not traveling very much over the last possible holiday. And according to the chief, our numbers have come back down, so maybe it wasn't so bad. So maybe that's less of a factor. I do agree also that earlier in June is better because June school days are fake. But Susie, you had a question or a comment?
I just think it's worth exploring.
Bronwyn?
Just to Marty's point, it's definitely right around the corner. I guess if we're going to discuss it, I would like to be able to have some parent and teacher feedback prior to making any decisions, if that's possible.
Kevin and then Nicole?
Yeah, I'm just guessing here, but as somebody who teaches for a living, I think our teachers are going to want a break because I think they're pretty flat out at this point, and I think that would be it'd be pretty rough for them to go straight through from January to when would be their break? April. That's a really long time without a break. So as a teacher, I think a break will make the instruction better because they won't be as burnt out.
I'd like to agree with that. I think that's a very long stretch without any break in there, and we want to make sure that we're not pushing people towards levels of burnt out either. If we as a committee did decide we really would like to look at this and get some student and or teacher and family feedback, could we perhaps look at feedback at a couple of different options, feedback of doing away with the break versus a feedback of perhaps shortening the break, or leaving it as is, and get feedback on all three options?
If this is something the committee would like us to pursue, certainly we would do that. I would recommend it would probably be wise, I hate to say this, but it would be wise to, if that data collection is part of it, we'd get that out ASAP this week, and then have you review it at a meeting on the 19th, so there's still a lot of time to negotiate it, so there's still a lot of time for it to be voted at your January 26th meeting.
I think it's too close.
I
think that's way too close for us to notify families on the 26th of January. Just my opinion.
Unless you.
And I think, I guess we could do the survey, but Kevin makes a really good point. I'm sure a lot of the teachers are really looking forward to the February vacation, because this year, unlike any other, they put in enough time all the other years, but the time they're putting in this year is just extraordinary.
Yeah, and I think, Jamie, I'll call on you in a second. I think one problem with February break is that it's a traditional break, but as far as the calendar goes, it's stupid because it's too close to the one we just had. So February break always seems done. And we can't get the state of Massachusetts to change vacations, right? Do we have to follow everybody else's, or can we just make our own, in, say, I don't know, March, the worst month for teaching? ever because it's always the longest and then the worst and the weather's terrible. And I love March. My birthday's in March, but it is the worst in schools. It always has been. And April break seems dumb because it's so close to the end. Our calendar's stupid, but we didn't create it. So I think maybe that's can be part of the impetus, Jamie, why February break coming up seems like a dumb thing because it really does always seem dumb. But
you're right.
I would the idea that we're a little close to it to be making changes.
Yeah.
But that is just my opinion. I think Jamie was first, then Nicole.
Yeah, the only reason I looked at the calendar for the first time during this meeting, and that's my initial thought was, okay, why are we doing this again? It just didn't make sense. And my real comments on this is you got to think of rhythm. I get it. I guarantee everybody on this call, every teacher, every kid, every parent is doing everything they don't want to do all year long. You know, guess what? You don't get a choice to be a parent, you don't get that choice. You know, so it stinks. We are all doing everything we don't want to do, and everybody wants to go do things. Got it. Yeah, that's everybody's honest excuse right now. But we have to live with it. It is what it is. I guess what I'm coming back to is what's right for the kids. I don't know. I am not a teacher. I won't act like I am one. You're going to get them into a rhythm. Tomorrow, into a rhythm where we're getting high schoolers who are having issues, and we'll see that we're asking them to come back. Does it make sense as a teacher, as an administrator, as a parent, to get them in a rhythm for a week and a half, 2 weeks, and then stop it, and then have to start it up again? I don't know. Doesn't make any sense to me as a business person, but that's just me looking at it going, this doesn't make any logical sense. But to say it's just because, you know, the other stuff, I mean, come on, we're all kind of a little frustrated by all this. You know, the reality is we're going to all doing things we don't really want to do. It stinks. I got it. But, you know, that's what's the right thing for the kids, I think, is what you got to come back to, not the right things for the adults, including myself. So just my opinion on it. I've been teaching a first and third grader and 2 middle schoolers, and it is what it is. We're figuring it out, and we're helping them through it. But, you know, I don't want them when they haven't really been back at school since Thanksgiving. So I think just to reverse this, everybody should think about this. What's the right decision for the kid? That's just my thought on it.
Nicole, you were next.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw in a practical side note. Also, just to affirm, Jamie, I 100% hear you as far as concerns about potentially opening us up to increased rates. I hear all that. It's definitely a concern. From a practical standpoint, we may find that in part because this is so close and in part because we might be the only folks having this conversation right now, that we find ourselves faced with a lot of substitutes that week. Because if all of the other area schools still have a February break, we may find ourselves with a lot of staff members who are not able to be in the building, especially with a last minute decision like that.
Bronwyn and then Kevin.
Just to follow up on what Nicole said, in terms of childcare, for anyone that doesn't teach in Long Meadow and their kids have a break that week and they've been planning on spending it with them, to put them in a position now of having to find someone would seem that could be pretty difficult. So I think that could possibly result in us having to find a lot of subs, and there just aren't a lot of subs right now.
Evan?
Yeah, I mean, I understand Jamie's point. I just think the time to have this conversation was 2 months ago, 3 months ago, 4 months ago. Now it's just too late. I mean, people have set their schedules, and even if they're not going anywhere, they've set their schedules. And I just don't think it's fair for us to ask our families to change their schedules at this point. That's my opinion.
Cool. Any other thoughts on the motion, which was to move parent-teacher conference days? Seeing none, we're gonna vote on moving parent-teacher conference days and only that, which was the motion, right? We didn't do that yet, right? I lost in the discussion of losing February. All right, so roll call vote. Kevin?
Yes.
Bronwyn?
Yes.
Gianna?
Yes.
Susie?
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
Nicole?
Yes.
And yes for me, the motion passes 7-0.
Anything further? I just want to
Next thing up is middle school statements.
Okay. Just so I'm clear, so nothing further on the February vacation. We set the calendar for, we set the revised calendar for 2020. I'll make sure my understanding is correct. Right.
Do we have a need for the surveys were discussed and possibility of more information for our next meeting? Do you all still want that? Do we have a consensus for more information or not? I get two questions. That's hard to answer. So if you're interested in more information regarding the possibility of canceling the February break in some fashion, if you're interested in more information or more discussion, can you do a thumbs up? Can you not hear me, Jamie? You shook your head. I'm not sure what you're saying there.
Could you my computer was dying and I was switching. What did you say?
That's fine. I just want to make sure you heard me. Marty is looking to find out if we are looking for more information about the idea of canceling February break. So the motion we did was just about the parent-teacher conferences, but we did have a discussion about the break. So now the idea is, are we asking Marty to come up with survey information, survey parents, teachers, begin a discussion with the union on whether or not we want to cancel February. So I'm wondering if we have a consensus if people want more information or not.
You're asking from, I do, but I'm obviously just one person.
Jamie does. Anybody else interested in that topic? Looks like that's a no, Marty.
Right.
But I agree with Jamie's points. And as I said, I think February break's always been dumb. So if we can do anything about it, that would be cool because the calendar is illogical in that area. So the next topic, Marty, is the middle school statements of interest.
Just quick, so I believe the committee is aware that the MSBA, the School Building Authority, had notified us that we would not hear in December or January on the status of our statements of interest for the two middle schools. And that applies not just to Long Meadow Public Schools, but all schools. They've delayed determination until June. What that allows, the silver lining in that perhaps, is that we could, if the committee were interested, we could use that time to provide the MSBA with some supplemental information. We could potentially refresh, add to the SOIs that we had prepared back in the spring and sent to the MSBA. And so what I'd like to do is to bring to the committee some options to consider a sort of a fresh look at our middle schools, a way to give us some fresh information about the status of the major systems at each school. To back up, the reason I think this is a good idea is there were two times where Long Meadow brought in an outside partner to look at the two middle schools. Back in 2008, I believe it was, the town did a major facility study of all town buildings. And then in 2015, that report was refreshed just for the two middle schools. The information that came out of those facility condition assessments in 2015 has fed into our SOIs for the last few years. We're now on, really, that information is now 5 years old. I'd like to gather some, have a fresh set of eyes, look at the two middle schools, and use that information, use the report to supplement and refresh our SOIs. I believe it would put us in a better position with the MSBA. They appreciate it when towns demonstrate that commitment. They appreciate outside surveys, outside looks at the facilities that they're considering. So if that makes sense to the committee, I could bring back some recommendations to you for your January 26th meeting. Give you an idea of what the potential scope of that type of assessment might be and what the associated costs would be. So if that makes sense, Tom and I are happy to do the legwork on that.
Anybody have any questions or comments about this? Bronwyn, then Gianna?
I do think it's a good idea for several reasons. For us to get as much information as possible. It would definitely help, I think, with our application. In addition to that, in the event that we didn't qualify, it would give us some more firm projects and prices, hopefully. So if we keep moving forward and for some reason didn't get the grant, we would know exactly what we would have to do. So I think an in-depth look by, a qualified firm is going to be very helpful to us. Thanks.
Gianna?
Yeah, thanks, Superintendent, for putting this option out there. I agree with Bronwyn. I think we definitely need more information. And Superintendent, I'm wondering, when the MSBA didn't accept our applications or SOIs, do they send like a detailed report, like this is the evidence that you were lacking? Like, do they give details of why it wasn't accepted, or is that possible to get those details so that we can?
They don't, and they won't. They really don't give you any specific feedback. They basically would say that they're identifying the neediest projects across the state and supporting applications based on the funds that they have available to them. I do think that they, I think we're on their radar screen. I think they're, we have been talking to them about our middle schools for several years now. They came and did a senior study, I guess it was last year. So, and in my conversation with a senior staff member there, they did indicate that they would welcome some additional or new information from one of our public schools. So I think it's an opportunity. I think we take advantage of this window. And as Bronwyn said, even if we don't pursue a major project with the state, it'll give us some information to talk to the community with about the needs of our two middle schools.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I'm wondering if it's possible to find out which companies have had success with MSBA in the past, and maybe they could be one of our options to look at if somebody has done reports that the MSBA has found. Or basically Gianna's question, do we get any answers? No, we don't get any, but is there a company who knows what the answers are? Maybe that's the group we need to be working with to make our presentation a little bit better. And then obviously the fact that we need open windows in 10-degree weather in order to get kids in the building is something that ought to be part of a report. And clearly our middle schools are lacking right now. So if we can find a successful firm, I think that's a great idea. Susie?
To what depth will this outside evaluator really, be able to provide details and and maybe I missed it, like the cost of this, what's it assumed, where does that come from?
I think so the answer is, it depends, right? It depends on the scope of the assessment that's done. And so what I'd like to do is bring back to the committee perhaps some options for the type of report that might be valuable to you. And so, it could be it could be a report that simply updates the reports based on, new construction costs, or it could be a report that is more involved, where they're doing some walkthroughs and taking a look at the individual building components. So I'd like to give the committee some options on that. The greater the scope, the greater the cost. This would not be, just to be clear, if anybody's watching at home, this wouldn't be a feasibility study in any way. It's been potentially described as a facility condition assessment. We're looking at the condition of the individual components, the major systems. So I think we'll have some information by the time of the next meeting, but I'd like to lay out some options, about what type of study could be done, and allow the committee to, kind of make that choice. It would be subject to the bidding process if it's and Tom can help out if it's less than $10,000. That's one thing. If it's more than 10,000, we have to get competitive pricing. And then if it's more than, there's another threshold that would require us to put it out to bid. I'd like to stay under that threshold so as to expedite the process. Does that help, Subi? And if the committee has any thoughts or direction on it tonight, that'll shape our work over the next couple of weeks. What you're looking for, what might be valuable.
Jamie?
And I'm in favor of getting as detailed as we can within reason and understanding any sort of safety issues, whether it's air quality, whatever it may be in those schools, and spending what we need to spend to figure out what is an issue and what's not an issue. I'd rather stop kicking a can down the road like we've done for probably 20 years and figure out, what, if we're not going to get these built, let's at least figure out some things to make sure it's healthy for our students, is what I prefer. So whatever we got to do to at least make sure we understand that, spend that amount of money to, figure it out.
I agree with that.
Gianna?
Superintendent, so when you're talking about, you're going to tell us what kinds of things might be, I'm thinking like a la carte, like you could have a super in-depth look at ventilation systems. You could have, a superficial look at, window ceilings, or, obviously I don't know anything about construction, but back to Ryan's suggestion, when you come to us with that information, kind of the menu of possible options, will that include, y'all have already looked at a couple of firms who, maybe they show you a sample of an SOI that they've done, again, like that's successful. Like I know I heard you that MSBA won't give us the answers, but I go back to kind of that rubric aspect of like, how can we frame it so that, our significant needs do come across. So I'm just wondering if you'll have time to kind of do what Ryan said and research some of those firms and then come to us with a menu based off of what they have presented.
Yes, that's our hope. And if we can get the answers in time for your next meeting, then we will present that to you. Again, I don't see this as a major feasibility study where, it gets costly when the firm you're working with brings in other firms or other consultants, brings in HVAC specialists or site specialists. That's when you start to add significantly to the cost of the study. I don't think we need that level of study. We need a study that helps us understand the present condition of the two middle schools, and gives us some idea if we may even be able to get some information on just at a conceptual level what the replacement costs would be of components or individual buildings, that kind of thing. So this is sort of a high level report. And again, if the committee would like to be more ambitious with that, or if it's something you'd like us to consider in greater detail, finance sub, we could do that. I appreciate the the committee's interest in gathering some additional information and putting a fresh set of eyes on our two middle schools. We've learned a lot about the two schools during the pandemic. You know, the electrical capacity, the HVAC systems. But we definitely could benefit from some new information.
Great, thank you. Any other questions?
No.
That was our last item.
Yep, thank you.
Susie,
I'd like to read a motion.
go ahead.
I move that the school committee adjourn the January 12th, 2021 school committee meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Kevin?
Sorry to delay, but Ryan, I wonder if you could just remind folks who might still be watching that we have an open meeting on Thursday.
Good point. Diane, what time is the meeting for Thursday?
It's at 6:30.
6:30. Special meeting, and it's titled
Public hearing.
Public Hearing on the Naming of the Track.
It's at 6:30.
Thank you for the reminder, Kevin. 6:30 on Thursday. Any other discussion? Okay, we'll vote. Kevin?
Yes.
Bronwyn?
Yes.
Deanna?
Yes.
Susie?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Nicole?
Yes.
Yes for me. Motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you all. See you soon.
Thank you.
Night.
Bye. Yeah.